All right, hello everybody. So today we're going to be doing a Unit 4 quiz review. And so all the skills that we'll be discussing today have been covered in class in one form or another. The purpose of this video is to help connect those skills to certain question types to expect on your next unit exam quiz, or I'm sorry, mid-unit quiz. So let's go ahead and follow along. Let's get started. So this first question says, what is the sum? Okay, so that's going to be important to know. I want to know the sum. That means the addition of the solutions of the equation 4x squared plus 18 equals 15x. And so when we've covered solving for these types of equations, it is quadratic. Okay. We are also having to identify the value of x when we set this equation equal to 0, right? So when we typically saw this, we would see it as 4x squared plus 18 equals 15x. We'd subtract 15x from both sides. Okay, so we would have 4x squared minus 15x plus 18 equals 0. Okay. Now, when we have solved these in the past, we typically want to break these down into two binomials. Okay. And that works when this a value is 1. Okay. Now, we haven't covered yet, we will in the following weeks, cover what to do when this a value is greater than 1. It's a technique that I go and teach called slide, divide, and kick up. Okay? But for the purpose of this, you do have this amazing tool of Desmos to use. So I do want you going to Desmos. And what you're able to do with Desmos is you can take this equation, plug it in. Now, it doesn't straight up give you the answer. You need to evaluate this. So it's asking for the sum of the solutions. So your solutions are where we cross the x-axis. Here at 1, 0, and 4, 0. And we're talking about x's. So our x values, in this case, would be 1 and 4. So we would say x equals 1 and x equals 4. But the question is not asking us to identify x or the values of x. It wants us to do the sum. So in other words, we need to take 1 plus 4, and that will equal 5. Okay, so this question is really taking our basic skill, having us apply our technological uses, and then push it to really understand the question. So please, if you have questions similar to this, you want to be sure that you are reading the question very carefully. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So which of the following represents the solution of the inequality 2x squared plus x minus 4 is less than negative 2? Okay, so if we have this question, 2x squared plus x minus 4 is less than negative 2. Okay, what we're able to do here is we can add 2 to both sides. So we would have 2x squared plus x. Negative 4 plus 2 would be negative 2 is less than 0. So again, just like in the last problem, we want to set this equivalent to 0. Okay? And we would want to solve for these values of x that make this statement true. Well, in order to do that, we would again need to to break down this trinomial into two binomials. We cannot do that yet because of this 2. So what we are able to do is we can take this inequality, apply it to Desmos, and you will get these answers where we are only concerned of the x values. Again, this is where we're crossing when when y is equal to 0. So our answers here would be x equals, and we're going from negative 1.5 to 1. Or we could talk about it as a fraction as negative 3 over 2 to 1 using this notation. Again, we use parentheses because we have less than. It's not less than or equal. If it was equal, we would use brackets. Okay, so that's just a refresher of this set of notations. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get moving on. So rewrite the expression x plus 5i times x minus 5i in standard form. So what we're doing here is we're multiplying complex numbers. And we've done this. We've actually done this week. Okay? So we're multiplying complex numbers. The only difference here is we have these x's. Typically we were working with questions where we had some type of number, right? We probably would have seen like 1 plus 5i times, I don't know, 6 minus 5i. But in this case, we have x plus 5i times x minus 5i. And we're going to follow the same techniques. We went over here. If we have multiplication of complex numbers, we need to use the box method. Okay, so we'll set up our box at x plus 5i, x minus 5i. Okay. And so we'll do x times x. This is x squared. X minus 5i would be negative 5i x. X times 5i would be 5i x. And 5i times negative 5i would be negative 25i squared. Okay. We need to identify that we're going to be combining these like terms here. And I'm going to expand that just so you can see visually what's happening. We're going to say x squared plus 5ix minus 5ix minus 25i squared. Well, like we were talking about, we need to combine these two like terms. So 5ix minus 5ix would just be 0. Right, when we're combining like terms, it's 5 minus 5 is 0, and then 0 times ix is still just 0. So we bring down our terms, so we'd have x squared minus 25i squared. Typically we would look like we're done here, but we're not. We need to recall that I squared is the same, or is equal to, negative 1. So what would happen here is we would get x squared minus 25 times negative 1. And we'd do negative 25 times negative 1, so we'd get x squared. Negative times negative is positive, so we'd have plus 25. There's your answer. So the same skills, only differences that we're seeing here is now we have x's instead of those natural numbers that we're used to working with these complex numbers. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So what is the factored form of this expression? And so students, this question is actually something that we're doing today in class. Okay, so this is going to be a recent skill here. So with this, we'll see this is 5x squared minus 10 equals negative 50. Well, anytime we're solving for x, we want to set this equal to 0, so we're going to add 50 to both sides. So we'll get 5x squared. Negative 10 plus 50 is 40. Plus 40 equals 0. in this question, what we can do is we can actually factor, simplify out. We can divide everything by 5. And so we'll get x squared, because 5 over 5 is 1, plus 8 equals 0. Now this is the problem. If we set this, like if we have x squared equals -8, we know we're going to get some imaginary numbers, right? And so in today in class, what we learned is we can actually split this up into 2 binomials, okay? Where we take the square root of that value, so we'd say x squared, square root of that. Well, we know that the square root and squares simplify out, so we're left with x, so we'll put x and x. And when we set these binomials up, we know that one of them is going to be positive, the other will be negative. The next value that we'll take is we need to take that square root of 8. Square root of 8. Okay. We do want to factor this. So we can say this would be the square root of 4 times 2. Because 4 times 2 is 8. So we can break that up as the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. The square root of 4 is 2, square root 2. 2, square root 2, 2, square root 2. And this would be your answer. Oh, I'm sorry. We're actually missing a very important part. When we do this, this is also going to create an I. And now this is our answer. So those i's are important. We always tack on those i's on that second part. So plus I and then your answer, and then minus I in your answer. And in class you would have learned that that's happening because that I times I will give us a -1, and it'll help us get this 8 when we work backwards, but you would have learned that in class. We're not going to go through all the principles for that today. Okay, so again, we got x plus I, 2 square root of 2, times x minus I, 2 square root of 2. And let's go ahead and go over our last problem here. So our last problem is they want us to find out an expression that's equivalent to this. So we have 3 plus I over 2 minus I. The problem with this is we don't want any i's in the denominator. We want to be able to work this out and come up to an equivalent expression without an I in the denominator. To do that, this is going to be new for us in this class. You would have learned how to do this in Algebra 1 for sure, but we need to multiply. Okay, we need to multiply this equation by the conjugate of the denominator. And if you'll recall, conjugates are simply the same expression, but if there was subtraction in the middle, well, now it becomes addition. And the reason we're allowed to do this is because 2 plus I divided by 2 plus I is essentially 1. So we're multiplying by 1, so we're not doing anything unusual here, okay, or changing this. So what's going to happen is we're actually going to end up having to do 2 different box methods. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to set this up here, and I'm going to set up our boxes. Okay, because in the numerator, we're going to multiply this value and this value. So really what we're doing is 3 plus I times 2 plus I. So when we work this out, we'll do 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times I is 3I times 2 is 2I, and I times I is I squared, right? And so when we pull that out, we'll see that as 6. We'll combine these two, 2I plus 5I, I'm sorry, 2I plus 3I is 5I plus I squared. And I'm sure you guys are already, it's clicking that I squared we need to change that, but we'll do that in just a bit. Let's go ahead and work on the box method for the denominator, which is 2 minus I times 2 plus I. So 2 minus I times 2 plus I. So let's work this out. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times I is 2I. 2 times negative I is negative 2I. And negative I times I is negative I squared. And so I'm sure you guys already seen that we need to combine these two. Well, negative 2I and 2I will simplify out. And that's why we multiply by the conjugate. That's what's important here. So those would simplify out, so you're just left with 4 minus I squared. Okay, and so let's start simplifying this a bit, because we know that we could have 6 plus 5I plus, we know that I squared is negative 1, right? I squared is equal to negative 1 over 4 minus, remember we put this in parentheses, this is going to make an importance here, minus 1. Okay? And then we just combine like terms. So we need to combine the 6 with a plus negative 1. Well, that's just negative 1. So 6 minus 1 is 5 plus 5I over, okay, 4 minus negative, it becomes plus. So 4 plus 1 is 5. And this would give you your answer. And you'll notice here that we no longer have i's in the denominator, which was our goal. Okay? We could technically factor this. You could actually factor 5's out from this. But that's a lesson for another day. I hope this review helps. Please be sure to study, and best of luck on your review. I'm sorry, not your review, your quiz tomorrow. All right, guys, have a good day, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.